Hi, third grade. So we are talking more about our ecosystems and how things interact with each other in ecosystems. So how animals interact with plants, how they interact with each other, how they are affected by the abiotic factors. So we learned these three words last week. We learned producer, consumer, and decomposer. So a producer is something that uses sunlight to make their own food and energy. Because remember, we get food from energy. Consumers consume or eat their plants and animals to get their food and energy. So a producer produces its own energy, and a consumer has to eat or consume its own energy. And then a decomposer is an animal that breaks down dead matter to return nutrients back to the soil. So we're going to learn a few more vocab words too. The first vocab word that we're going to learn, and you might already know this one, is called a predator. A predator is an animal that hunts other animals for food. So like this, it looks like a bobcat, I guess, is hunting other animals for food. It's a predator. So like if this bobcat were to be eating, this isn't right, but a cow, then that's the predator. Now, so this is the animal that eats others. Our next word is prey. P-R-E-Y. A prey is any animal that is hunted or caught for food. So the predator eats it, and the prey is being eaten. So if a whale was eating a fish, then the whale would be the predator, and the fish would be the prey. Predator and prey. Today we're going to start putting these animals together into food chains and food webs. So a food chain shows how energy is passed from one living thing to another. So it shows how the energy goes from the grass to the ants to the lizard to the rattlesnake to the fungus, which is a decomposer. So this one is really interesting. The ants eat the grass, the lizards eat the ants, and the rattlesnake eats the lizard. But when all of these things die, the fungus, or like this mushroom here, decomposes it. So this shows where the energy goes. So the grass is eaten by the ants are eaten by the lizard, and the lizards are eaten by the rattlesnakes. So we're going to practice some of that today and tomorrow. So I have some cards here. Where does everybody get their energy? Actually, this is a weird question. So all of the energy on Earth comes from the sun. So the sun, this plant here gets its energy from the sun. It makes its own energy from the sun. That's what makes it a producer. Producers are plants. They use sunlight to produce or make their own food. So the energy goes from the sun to the plant. This arrow here shows where the energy goes. It goes from the sun to the plant. Then what happens to the plant? The plant gets eaten. What's something that the plant can get eaten by? I'm going to move this up a little bit. Plants are eaten by cows. So the energy goes from the sun to the plant, and then from the plant to the cow, because the cow eats the grass. The energy is moved. Most of the time you'll see it in a straight line, so let me move it over a little bit. At least when it's a food chain. I still don't think it's going to fit. There we go. So we have the sun. We have a producer, and we have a consumer. Now, I label this primary consumer. Primary just means first. He's the first consumer in this row. He's actually the only consumer in this row. So this is a food chain. It shows how it's passed. The energy is passed. This gets eaten by the cow. All right, let's do another one. I'm going to move these. And like I said, it might look weird because I can't get everything in the picture. Let me show you this one. So it says, a food chain models a pathway for food energy to be transferred from organism to organism in an ecosystem. So all food chains begin with the sun. Then we have a producer. Then this caterpillar eats the producer. The bird eats the caterpillar, and the snake eats the bird. The energy flows through them as it gets eaten. Let's make another food chain. It starts with the sun, always, always. Then the energy goes from the sun to a plant. This plant is a tree. What type of organism is a tree? Is it a consumer, a producer, or a decomposer? It is a producer. Then something eats the tree. So the energy goes to that something. That something is a giraffe. Giraffes are my favorite. I have to keep moving them because they're just not in the right place. So a giraffe is a consumer. It's a primary consumer because it's the first consumer in the chain. Then a giraffe might get eaten. He might get eaten by this hungry lion. I know, it's so sad. Giraffes are my favorite. This lion is called a secondary consumer because he's second. He is the second consumer. So our food chain goes sun, tree, giraffe, lion. The energy flows through the chain. Producer, primary consumer, and secondary consumer. It goes through the chain. Now I'm going to give you some animals, and I want you to think about what order they would go in. Think about where the arrows would go. I have a flower, I have a ladybug, I have a bird, and I have a big owl. Which is the producer? The flower. So the flower is the producer. He makes its energy from the sun. So the energy goes from the sun to the flower. Then what? Then the ladybug. The energy goes from the flower to the ladybug. He's a primary consumer. He's the first one. Then what do you think? This isn't always the case, but you can sometimes think about which animal is bigger. Now, that's not always the case. But this bird will eat this ladybug. So this is the predator, this is the prey, because he eats the ladybug. And then this bird gets eaten by this owl. So this is a secondary consumer. This is called a tertiary consumer, but you don't need to know that. So the energy flows through the chain. Like I said, normally you'll see them in a straight line, but I don't have enough room to make a straight line. All right, one more. Now I'm going to add another element. So we start with the sun. The sun's energy has to go to a producer because consumers cannot make their own energy. Then this flower gets eaten by this bunny. Then this bunny gets eaten by this fox. Then We have this guy. This guy's a mushroom. A mushroom is a decomposer. Do you remember what a decomposer does? It decomposes things, right? So sometimes the way you'll see it is that it will go to the mushroom. Now, the mushroom does not eat the fox. Please don't think that. But what's happening is all of the energy goes to the fox, and then when the fox dies, the mushroom decomposes it. It breaks it down so that all the nutrients can go to the soil. So he's our decomposer. But in reality, all of these things kind of go to the decomposer, right? Because when they all die, they all give their energy to the decomposer, and he breaks it down. But you just need to know that the decomposer's job is to break down those animals, those dead animals, to bring the nutrients into the soil. All right, so now I want you to think about making your own food chain. So I know me, I kind of have a hard time doing this because it's hard for me to think about what animals eat other animals. So I'm going to use one of our ecosystem pages from last week. And you were supposed to draw a picture up here, but I did not. So I can use my plants and animals. I know that these plants and animals are in the same ecosystem. So I know that they might eat each other or be eaten. So I'm going to draw a food chain. All food chains start with the what? The sun. Next, we need a producer. Which of these is a producer, a plant or an animal? The plant, right. I'm going to pick seaweed. I'm going to draw some seaweed. Then the seaweed might get eaten by the fish. So I'm going to write fish. Here's my fish. Then the fish might get eaten by a dolphin. I'm just going to draw a bigger fish with a little thing. I know it doesn't really look like a dolphin. That's okay. I'm going to label it. So here's my food chain. All I did was I took the animals that I know are in the ocean. I don't necessarily know that fish eat seaweed, y'all. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't know everything about every animal. But I can infer that since they live in the ocean ecosystem together, that they might eat seaweed. So the energy from the sun goes to the seaweed, which goes to the fish, which goes to the dolphin. All right, next up, you have a Generation Genius assignment. A video. Please enjoy. I know you guys love Generation Genius. Then you have an iStation assignment, and which I know seems weird for science, but there are some great science assignments in iStation. And then don't forget to do your cursive. Thank you so much for listening, 3rd grade.